Hello friends, my name is Venkatesh Marke and welcome back to my channel. Friends, today we are diving into early life of Adolf Hitler. We'll explore the experiences that shaped the man who would become one of the world's most notorious dictators. When Adolf Hitler was born on the April 20th, 1889 in Austria. He was the fourth out of 6 children born to Adolf Hitler and Clara. But the Hitler father was a custom officer, known for his strict and often harsh demeanor. His mother, on the other hand, was described as a loving and caring woman. Well, this contrast in the parenting style would have a significant impact on the young Hitler. Hitler's early years were marked by a frequent move and the family turmoil. But the family relocated several times during his childhood, disturbing his education and the social life. Well, Adolf Hitler wanted his son to follow his footsteps and became a civil servant. However, Hitler has a dream of becoming an artist. This conflict with his father would continue throughout his teenage years. In the year 19th, Hitler's young brother died of measles. This loss deeply affected the family, particularly Hitler's mother. It's believed that this event may have contributed to Hitler's growing sense and isolation. As a teenager, Hitler struggled academically. He was particularly weak in the languages and the mathematics. However, he excelled in the subject like history and the geography. In the year 1903, Hitler's father died suddenly of lung hemorrhage. This event marked a turning point in Hitler's life. With the father gone, he felt free to pursue his artistic ambition. Hitler left school in the year 1905 with the age of 16 or at the age of 16 without a diploma. He spent his next 2 years in the Linz, Austria, living off his orphan pension and the support from his mother. During this time, he devoted himself to reading and the drawing, still dreaming of becoming an artist. In the year 1907, Hitler moved to Vienna with hopes of attending the Academy of Fine Arts. He applied twice but was rejected both times. These rejections were devastating blows to his self-esteem and artistic aspirations. While in Vienna, Hitler often struggled to make money. He sold postcards of his painting to tourists and performed odd jobs to survive. It was during this period that Hitler began to develop anti-Semitic views. Vienna in the year 90s was hotbed of political and the social ideologies. Hitler was exposed to various radical ideas, including nationalism and the anti-Semitism. In year 1913, Hitler moved to Munich to avoid conscription into the Austrian army. However, when World War I broke out in the year 1914, he volunteered for service in the German army. Hitler served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front, earning the Iron Cross for bravery. The end of World War I in the 1918 was a turning point for Hitler. Like many Germans, he was shocked and angered by Germany's defeat and the subsequent Treaty of Versailles. The sense of betrayal and the humanitarian would fuel his future political ambitions. After the war, Hitler remained in the army and was assigned to spy on the political group in the Munich. It was during this time that he first encountered the German Worker Party, Impressed by their nationalist and the anti-Semitic ideology, Hitler joined the party in the year 1919. Hitler quickly rose through the rank of the party, which was later renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party or Nazi Party. His powerful oratory skills and the charismatic personality made him a popular figure within the movement. Now, let's talk about Hitler's artistic ambition and his time as a struggling painter in Vienna, Austria. It's the year 90s, and young Hitler arrives in the Vienna with the dreams of becoming a great artist. He's just 18 years old, filled with the hopes and the ambitions. Vienna at this time is a culture hub, bursting with the artists, musicians, and the intellectuals. It is the perfect place for an aspiring painter to make his marks. But why did Hitler choose art in the first place? As a child, he shown as early interest in the drawing and the painting. In the year 1907, Hitler applied to Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. He was confident in his abilities and sure he would be accepted. But things didn't go as planned. The Academy rejected his application, stating that his drawing showed unfitness for paintings. This rejection was a huge blow on Hitler's ego and aspirations. Despite this setback, Hitler didn't give up on his dreams. He decided to stay in the Vienna and continue working on his arts. He spent his days painting postcards and architecture scenes. Life in the Vienna wasn't easy for young artists. He lived in the poverty, often struggling to find food and shelter. He stayed in the men's hostel and sometimes even slept on park benches. This period of hardship would later influence his political views and ideologies. Now, let's move on to Adolf Hitler and his relationship with women. First up, let's talk about Hitler's first love, Stephanie Isaac. Yes, you heard it right. Hitler's first crush was on a young Jewish girl. This was back in 1905, when Hitler was just a teenager in the Linz, Austria. Moving on to the more significant relationship in the Hitler's life, Jelly. Well, the Jelly was Hitler's half-niece, the daughter of his half-sister Angela. Their relationship began in the year 1925 when Hitler hired Angela as his housekeeper. Jelly moved in with Hitler's and soon became a fixer in his life. Their relationship was complicated and controversial. Hitler was extremely possessive and controlling of Jelly. He dictated who she could see and what she could do. Tragically, Jelly was found dead in the Hitler's apartment in the year 1931, apparently from suicide. Her death deeply affected Hitler. Next, we have Eva Braun, perhaps the most well-known Hitler's companions. Eva met Hitler in the year 1929 when she was just 17 years old, working as an assistant in Heinrich Hoffmann's photo studio. Hitler was 40 years old at that time, and their relationship remained a secret for many years. Eva's life with Hitler was far from glamorous. Despite Hitler's neglect and her 2 suicide attempts, Eva remained loyal to him until the very end. They married in the Berlin bunker just hours before their joint suicide in the April 1945. Now, let's talk about Hitler's health and the mental state. Hitler's rise to power is well documented. But what about his personal struggle? Many historians and the psychologists have debated whether Hitler suffered from mental illness. Let's start by looking at Hitler's early life and the potential factors that could have influenced his mental state. Born in the Austria year 1889, Hitler experienced a troubled childhood. His father was a Jew, and he lost both parents by the age of 18. These early traumas have played a role in the shaping his personality and the mental health. As we move into the Hitler's adult years, we see some concerning behaviors emerge. Witnesses reported frequent mood swings and explosive anger. He was known to fly into the uncontrollable rages, often over minor issues. Hitler also displayed signs of paranoia and the disillusion. He believed he was destined to lead Germany to greatness and often spoke of divine interventions. These beliefs went beyond mere confidence, bordering on disillusioned thinking. One of the most debated aspects of Hitler's mental state was his possible drug use. Historical records suggest he was prescribed various medication, including amphetamines and the opioids. These could be the substances have affected his decision making and the mental stability. Where the psychiatrist who studied Hitler's case suggested he may have suffered from a bipolar disorder. Well, another factor possesses that Hitler may have had an antisocial personality disorder. As the war progresses, eyewitnesses reported a decline in Hitler's physical and the mental state. He became increasingly isolated and paranoid, trusting very few people around him. Well, could this have been a result of a mounting pressure or a sign of deteriorating mental health? Now, let's discuss the Hitler's diet and the lifestyle. Let's start with the big question. Was Hitler a vegetarian? The short answer is no. But it's more complicated than that. Hitler did reduce his meat consumption later in the life, but he wasn't a strict vegetarian. He enjoyed plenty of meat dishes throughout his life. So, where did this vegetarian myth come from? It's partially due to Nazi propaganda efforts to portray Hitler as a simple and the aesthetic leader. Now, let's look at what Hitler ate. According to his chef, Hitler's favorite dishes was stuffed scarf. That's a young pigeon. Definitely not a vegetarian fare. He also enjoyed Bavarian sausage, liver dumpling, and the caviar. Not exactly the diet of the committed vegetarian. Let's talk about Hitler's actually dietary preferences. He had a sweet tooth and loved chocolates and the pastries. Sugar was a big part of his diet, often consuming it in the large quantities. He was particularly fond of chocolate cakes. Now, let's talk about Adolf Hitler's complicated relationship with religion. Hitler was raised in the Catholic family, but his views on the organized religion were complex and often contradictory. In public, he often presented himself as a Christian to appeal to the largely Christian German population. However, in the private, he expressed disdain for Christianity and its teachings. Hitler saw Christianity as a weak religion that promoted compassion and forgiveness. These values conflicted with his vision of a strong, dominant German nation. Instead, Hitler advocated for what he called positive Christianity. This was a twisted version of Christianity that removed Jewish element and promoted Nazi ideas. Now, move on to the loyalty, betrayal, and the paranoia that defines Hitler's interaction with his closest associate. Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany, was known for his charismatic yet tyrannical leadership. But what about the people who surrounded him? These were the individuals who had direct access to the Hitler and influenced his decisions. As the war progressed, the Germany's situation worsened. Cracks began to appear in the Hitler's relationship. One of the most famous examples of betrayal was the June 20th plot in 1944. This was an assassination attempt on Hitler, led by German army officers. Colonel Klaus, once a supporter of Hitler, became disillusioned and planted a bomb in Hitler's Wolf headquarters. The plot is failed, but it shook Hitler's trust in his military leadership. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler became increasingly suspicious of those around him. He started to mistrust even his most loyal followers. This paranoia led to a series of purges within the Nazi leadership. Anyone suspected of disloyalty could face severe consequences. This paranoia and the mistrust ultimately contributed to Germany's defeat in the war. It's important to note that not everyone in Hitler's inner circle was blindly loyal or a potential traitor. Now, let's move on to the final days of Adolf Hitler. The story of Hitler's final days began on April 16, 1945. Soviet forces had launched their assault on Berlin, pushing over closer to the heart of Nazi regime. As the day passed, the situation for the Germans grew increasingly desperate. Reports of Soviet advances reached the bunker hourly. Hitler's military advisors urged him to flee Berlin while there was still time. But the Hitler refused, determined to remain in the capital until the bitter end. On April 20th, Hitler celebrated his 56th birthday in the bunker. As April drew to the close, Hitler's mental health began to deteriorate. He blamed his generals for the military failures. He ranted about perceived betrayal by his closest allies. Those around him watched as the man who had once commanded a continent now struggled to face reality. On April 28th, Hitler received news that would seal his fate. Heinrich Himmler, one of his most trusted lieutenants, had attempted to negotiate a surrender with the Allies. For Hitler, this was the final betrayal. In the fit of rage, he orders Himmler's arrest and expulsion from the Nazi party. The next day, April 29, Hitler married his longtime companion Eva Braun. It was a brief ceremony conducted in the bunker's map room. On April 30th, with the Soviet troops just a block away, Hitler made his final decision. He dictated his last will, a rambling document filled with anti-Semitic rhetoric. Then, sometime in the early afternoon, Hitler and Eva Braun retired to their private quarters. At approximately 3:30 p.m., a gunshot was heard from Hitler's room. When his staff entered, they found Hitler and Eva dead. Hitler had shot himself, while Eva had taken cyanide. Following Hitler's previous order, their bodies were taken to the Rhein's Chancellery Garden. With Hitler's death, the remaining Nazi leadership in the bunker began to disintegrate. Some, like Joseph and his family, choose suicide over surrender. The bunker where Hitler spent his last days no longer exists. It was demolished after the war, leaving only memories and historical accounts. The story of Hitler's downfall serves as a warning from history. It shows how even a mightiest regime can crumble when faced with the consequences of their actions. As we reflect on the Hitler's final days, we are reminded of the human cost of the war. It's a stark reminder of the darkness humanity is capable of, but also of our capacity to overcome it. What are your thoughts on this pivotal moment in the history? Share your reflexes in the comments below. And if you found this video informative, please like and subscribe for more historical contents. Remember, by understanding our past, we can work together better future. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.